Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to our first speaker series of the weekend. Thank you so much for coming back on for the next part of the weekend. I hope you're really getting on with your ideas now. So we have with us here today Roisin Lyons. Roisin is an assistant professor of entrepreneurship and innovation in DCU. She's also been very involved in some really incredible projects like the open source ventilator project, which kicked off near the start of the hackathon. And ended up developing, I think, like dozens of different open source ideas. She's got an incredible amount of experience on innovation and hackathons, so I think she's a lot to kind of offer here in terms of advice. So I'll let you take over.
Great. Hi, everyone. Hope you're enjoying your weekend. I have, as Sam has said, been involved in a number of hackathons. I've run them and I've participated in them, and I cannot recommend them enough for learning about entrepreneurship and really getting some great ideas. So today I'm just going to give you a couple of tips, tell you a little bit about myself, and try and share some insights that might help you today in going forward with your concepts. I'm going to share my screen very briefly, and if there is a function to ask questions and to chat, please do. It's Saturday morning. I need a bit of audience participation if possible, so I'd be very, very grateful for that. So just to tell you a little bit about myself, and I'm not trying to show off or anything, I'm just trying to give you an insight of why you should listen to me. And I think can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you okay. You just make sure you hit the share your screen button whenever you're ready.
Yeah, actually, it seems like it's frozen, so I'm just going to keep talking. It's fine. I'll tell you about myself. Okay. So yeah, as Sam said, I'm an assistant professor in entrepreneurship and innovation in DCU Business School. I actually teach entrepreneurship in Dublin and in Riyadh because we have a university over there. So I've seen the power of entrepreneurship to really empower people in lots of different countries and in lots of different contexts. The initiation of Team OSV at the start of the lockdown in March was very exciting. We tried to create an open source platform for innovation to try and kind of create emergency kit solutions and ventilators. We put out some calls in early March. We got 4,000 people to sign up. So we weren't expecting such a mass of engagement and attention, but we really used it. So since then, I've been very focused on open source and seeing the power of kind of really good designs and really good engagement and what it can do on a global sense. I teach sustainability and social enterprise, so that's a really big focus of mine. And I've heard from Sam that you have, so still frozen screen, but if you can hear me, I'm going to keep going. So when we're thinking about starting a new venture, and I know that yesterday you probably have formed your teams and come up with your ideas, that's excellent. Probably the most important thing that I would recommend to you at this stage is to make sure that you're solving a problem. So I teach to engineering and computer science students a lot, and sometimes you can get so caught up in the how of what you're doing, the technical problem solving aspect of the, how we do it, what's it going to look like, what's it going to be part of, that we forget that what we're actually trying to do is trying to solve a problem for a specific person. So run back to your target audience and try and see what's the problem you're trying to address, who you're trying to address it for, what they're currently doing at the moment. So what's the alternative that they're currently engaged in? And is there any way that you can beat that current competitor? So for every solution that's out there, or for every problem that's out there, there's many solutions. You're trying to develop one, but there might be others. So what are the other alternatives that they're currently doing? You're also trying to, solve a gap in the marketplace. So, is there a justifiable gap is really important. Sorry. You can still hear me, Sam, can you?
Yeah, we can hear you okay. Do you want to send your slides to me really quick and I can put them up? Can you hear me okay, Roisin? Okay, sorry guys, it looks like I think Roisin might be having some technical issues at the minute. We'll just give her a second there. Okay, thanks, Justine. Okay, guys, Roisin is just going to join again. I think she's just having issues with her camera and microphone. So just 2 seconds and she'll be back on. Feel free to think about some questions you might have for Roisin. It can be specific to your idea or maybe your domain. She's got a massive amount of experience, especially with the open source ventilator project. They did a bunch of different open source solutions across a number of different industries, not just ventilators. So over here, Roisin is back now.
Hey guys. Okay, that was very stressful. Hopefully we'll be able to solve everything. And now, sorry about that. The screen completely froze. I couldn't see anything. I couldn't hear anything. It was really stressing me out. So hopefully that doesn't happen again. Maybe I'll try and share my screen this time and hopefully things won't freeze out for me.
Yeah.
Lovely. Okay. Fingers crossed. All right. Okay, so swiftly through what I was saying. As I said, I teach a lot of entrepreneurship. I teach in multiple contexts. I'm very passionate about social sustainable enterprise. And I think we are in a very incredible time at the moment for innovation, but also we need to be careful that while we are trying to prevent a pandemic from further spreading, we can't let go of the fact that we are in a climate crisis. So any of the solutions that you're coming up with today, you know, are they something that we could replicate to think about the climate crisis afterwards, or are you thinking about things in a sustainable manner? Would be really, really excited to hear. Also, we are now faced with hybrid learning, online learning, and I know a lot of you are experiencing the complication of not being on campus if you are in college or in a learning environment, and we need to come up with solutions now. Particularly the people that are experiencing those problems will be the best met to figure out those solutions. So I think you are very well placed for something like this. When we started the kind of the hackathon method or the startup method, you come up with your idea. Your idea should be based on a valid problem. And when I say valid, I mean that you have asked your customers these questions, you've sought secondary research, and I know that's what you're doing at the moment, trying to validate that idea. Once you have that kind of idea in mind and you have a good sense of who you're selling it to, you might try to prototype it. And I know because a lot of you are very technical, you might be trying to wireframe or even develop your apps or websites or platforms as it stands. That's an amazing way of showing your judges, your investors, exactly what you're thinking of and coming up with that kind of MVP or minimum base project to show us what you're doing. But prototypes are great for getting insight. So if you've developed even a wireframe app or you've developed a very basic idea of what you're doing, that's the place where you ask more questions. So you reach out to your customer base, and even if you can do that today by showing people some designs, ringing them up, posting it on social media and trying to get some feedback to validate your idea, that's brilliant. Otherwise, you might suffer from a little bit of groupthink where just because you think it's a great idea and a great design may not mean that everybody else does. So reach back out to as many people as possible. You know, email your designs to me, to Sam, get as much feedback as you can today. Would be brilliant. Once you measure how those people respond, you might pivot or persevere. So pivot means just change your idea slightly, change to a different market perhaps, or persevere is just keep on going. So all of those aspects you're going to run through today. And based on that, your kind of changed idea, you might present it at the end of today or tomorrow. So when you're thinking of your idea, you know, I know that a lot of you have based it on problems that you've had, and that's the best way to observe an opportunity. You know, a trend, observing a trend, solving a problem, finding a gap in the marketplace, or a combination of these. And, you know, COVID-19 has created a lot of avenues for these problems and a lot of trends to mirror. So I can see why a lot of you might go towards that. But remember what else is going on, you know, that may affect your customer base and may affect your company. You know, in terms of an economic trend on the rise, we are going to see some signs of recession in the next year or two. So while you're developing a really good idea and concept, make sure you think about how your customer is going to pay for it. Is it going to be too expensive for people entering a recession? Are you selling to businesses? And if so, do they have to pay for everything at the start? Or are you going to get them to pay for it kind of in increments or in subscriptions? All of these little decisions change your business model. You're looking at social trends, and we're looking at how we have all changed as a society in terms of how we share experiences and how we connect with one another. There's a lot of avenues for exploration and a lot of avenues for changing your idea slightly to fit in with some of those changing norms, which could be really, really interesting. You know, we've come a long way in terms of our digital kind of training this year, and a lot of people who would never have used, say, Zoom and remote working are now on board. So that opens up a whole new range of people that could be potential customers for you. Obviously, you're going to be leveraging as much technology as possible. Great time to do it. People are primed to understand a little bit more technology now. So you might be able to explain some of your concepts a lot easier to investors. So a lovely time for a data-focused concept. Also, keep an eye on political and regulatory trends. So obviously, for any computing type of application or software in the last couple of years, GDPR has changed a lot of how they've had to run. Keep an eye on what's going on in some of those kind of outside trends and forces to see if that'll affect your company. You know, this is a little bit longer term for what you're doing, or try and solve a problem. You know, and when you're pitching your idea, if this is a company idea that you have created because you've recognized a problem in your own home or in your own study life, tell that story. A good example of this is Andre, who was a DCU student who hated transcription. He hated a lot of things in his kind of thesis projects. One of them was transcribing endless interviews. So that problem became a solution for him, and he created a transcription software program that helped lots of people and still continues to do. It's a very successful company. So when he's pitching his concept, he tells his story. He says, one day I was doing a project and it was killing me. So make sure you connect your story to what you're trying to do, because it has to have started from somewhere. And lastly, finding gaps in the marketplace. So the way that we engage with entertainment, the way we're going to engage with music, learning, home life, remote work context, time management, it's all to play for. And you've probably happened upon one, but don't be so rigid in your concept right now because you haven't really explored it fully. Don't be so rigid to not continue your thinking about adding some other flavors or features into what you're doing. Remember that kind of a good opportunity is attractive to customers, will work in the business environment, can be executed in the timeline that you're proposing, and you have the right team and resources to make it work. So at no point are we talking about, you know, what the back end actually looks like in terms of the software. Is it attractive for the customers? Will it work for them? Is it what they want? I think we run the risk sometimes of developing the solution that we think the best version of what we think we can do, but actually the best version of what we think we can do is the exact thing the customer wants. So strip away all of the extra bells and whistles that you're just doing to make it look cool, that you think it'll be, you know, a great idea for you, and go back to thinking what the customer needs, who those customers are, and how you're going out to reach them. So you've probably kind of landed on your problem, and a couple of those insights might tell you about your problem. You're working on your solution. So you're really trying to get that expert insight to develop who is it for, what does it look like, and you know, what version of your product will work for them. And don't always go for the really high-tech solution. You know, plenty of companies and startup teams that I would work with, they start by thinking they're going to develop an app. And then after a while, they realize, well, that might be quite costly. That might not connect with their audience just as well. We might go back and just develop a kind of really good platform and connect with them. And in our future plans, consider an app afterwards. So your solution can have many forms. Once it's based on a really good problem that you're trying to solve, as any solution, you know, many solutions can work, and those solutions will change based on who you're talking to. Remember, a cool thing that you can do, because I know that you come from a broad kind of range of disciplines, is you can do something called cross-industry innovation, where if there's a solution in a different industry, you can just borrow it. So when something has been solved in another context, use it in this one. Good example here, turnstiles used for food service. You know, it brings the food to you, so it's less staff costs, less service, and something a bit novel. Really nice for something in a socially distant context now. You know, again, if something's been solved in another context, borrow that idea and bring it over to what you're doing. And you can apply that to kind of the tech landscape as well. Okay, so cross-industry innovation is a good tip for you when you're thinking about other ways to solve what you're doing. But joining it all up can be tricky. And when you come to pitching your concept, you know, you might find that it's tricky to navigate. So things that I would recommend is when you're pitching your idea and when you're even discussing your idea with your mentors today, try to bring it into terms that they'll understand. So explain it through the customer's eyes rather than the technician's eyes. So when the mentor comes and they say, can you tell us about your idea? Just give them a kind of a one-sentence overview of what it is and what it does for the customer. After that, you can explain how you're planning to build it, what it looks like from a tech perspective. But if they don't understand it from the customer's perspective, if they don't understand the value can add for them, then you've kind of lost some of your opportunity in discussing with them, because if they don't understand it, they can't help you. So the first thing is explain it through the eyes of the customer. Really make sure that you know who that customer is and describe them. Try and narrow down particularly who that is. One thing that investors hate is a broad spectrum target audience. So when a startup says we're targeting males and females from 15 to 60, no. You can't afford a marketing budget that can market to both, say, young students of 15 and older people of 60. There just isn't enough marketing budget as a startup to be able to justify that. So narrow down your concept and your target audience as much as possible. Try to fit them into as many taste preferences, as many location preferences as you can. And when you tell that story, you say, our customer is 15 to 25-year-old males who play computer games. Okay, then this solution serves this customer by, and you explain what your concept does. Very late stage in the game, you're explaining how it's built, what it's built on, and the technical attributes that's expected to a certain degree. So clear picture of what you're doing, how it serves the customer, and then validate your concept. So at hackathons, we love it when you've talked to the public. So after you've pitched your idea, your target market, a little bit of how it works, you say, we went out and spoke to 10 people about our concept, and here's what they said. This really helps to validate what you're doing, and it kind of gives it that sense of reality as well. So I think they're kind of the things that I really want to kind of focus on, and I'm happy to take any questions, but really just make sure that you know your problem, make sure you know who you're serving with that problem, address your solution from the eyes of the customer, and validate your concept by talking to experts, by talking to your mentors, and by talking to the public. And after that, just try and enjoy it. It's a bit of fun, you know, and I think this is the place where really great startups can come from, because they're, a lot of people with enthusiasm, with engagement, and with a knowledge of what they're doing and how to do it. So I'm really excited to see what can come about. And I will love to work with or mentor or give any feedback to any teams. Just contact me at roisin.lyons@dcu.ie, and I'd be more than happy to give you some help. So I think that's me done. Sam, you're back.
I was on mute. Hey, Roisin. So we have a question here from Ben. Ben asks, how much market research do you recommend they should do on their ideas?
Yeah. So, I mean, in the large context, if you are running a startup, I would say you always are doing market research. But for the purposes of your hackathon, Sam, are they presenting today or tomorrow?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Yeah, tomorrow evening. So.
Okay, so a good idea there is if you have a good sense of a prototype or even some visuals to explain what your concept is, some handy ways of doing market research is just to post that on social media and try and maybe add a poll and get some market research to back up what you're doing. That's a pretty easy, simple win of doing that. Other market research that you could do is try and call some kind of experts or some people, or even just ask your mentors, can you quote them on some things? They like that too, that's fine. So I would do as much as possible when it comes to market research and validation, but try to make clever use of your time and your resources when you're doing it. If you spend your whole next day trying to run and do market research, you might let go of some of the other concepts. But the earlier you can start that market research, and like the earlier you can get some polls out or some emails out, the more market research is building. So I would start straight away, even if you're just posting a logo at the moment and saying, what do you guys think of this? And then as you get through your process and as you're building your concepts and your ideas, add more. If you still have questions, ask people those questions. Don't spend time in teams just trying to talk about them. Put them out there. So as much as possible, because it'll save you time and it'll add validation. It's kind of a win-win.
Thanks, Roisin. So I think just while some more questions maybe come in, I think at least one of our ideas from one of the teams planned to work with hospitals. Did you have any interaction with hospitals when you were working with Open Source Ventilator?
Yeah, we did. We would have been stocking and supplying the PPE for a number of the large hospitals through our chain, actually. When it got really tough, our initiative called BCT, Bravo Charlie Tango, we created a network of motorbike drivers, 1,000 motorbike drivers who were doing the deliveries all around the country. So my point of pride from lockdown was that I am now a biker in a biker club. But we did discuss with hospitals. Now, hospitals are very protected by kind of procurement rights. And so decisions take a long time to get made in terms of supplying stuff there. They usually have to be quite legitimized companies in order to kind of get any relationship going. Is it a kind of a tech solution for hospitals in general, or for?
What I know of the idea, I think it's something to do with waste management in hospitals. So they're using computer vision, I think, to sort waste.
Lovely. Well, look, what we found was we contacted a couple of hospitals that were in real demand and who we had kind of personal contacts with, and they were kind of our champions. So once we had gotten provision and approval to work with those, then we were able to kind of contact other hospitals and do likewise. So what I would say is, if you are from a local village or town, or if you have any contacts that work in healthcare, maybe reach out to them and see if you can get a contact through them in order to pilot your idea in a small hospital. Once it's been approved there, then perhaps that's how you would validate your idea and move it forward. And as a tip, I would say recommend that you, when you're picking the hospital as your kind of target hospital, perhaps pick someone that has a research element to the hospital. So one that's attached to a university, maybe even the one in Trinity, because they're more likely to pilot things and to be encouraged by doing kind of research on a startup concept to see if it'll work, and then you can use that to move out. But definitely in your startup plan, try and just focus on getting one hospital to kind of work, to function, or if your waste management system needs kind of a couple of them in order to kind of break even, maybe look at targeting hospitals in one region. So in like one Dublin code, for example, and try and get 3 hospitals or 3 even, small clinics and one hospital in a region. For waste management, that's a lot more secure as a concept than trying to kind of get a hospital in Kerry and one in Galway and one in Limerick. You'd never validate your idea in that fashion. Sounds cool though.
Brilliant. And another idea might be relevant to you as well as a university lecturer. So I think the idea is to solve the problem of first years meeting people in college. They think and just social interaction in college and how impeded it's been with COVID. So I don't know too much about the specifics of how to implement it. But do you think that's something universities might support?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a huge problem and it's something we're really worried about. First years in DCU have priority. So the minute that the lockdown ends, they're our first kind of port of call to try and get them on campus, just to try and create that social space. Now, I'm not sure from the sounds of it, Sam, is it that they're creating a social space online, or is it one that they're trying to kind of make the mechanisms for offline more secure?
I think it was online.
Okay. Yeah, so I mean, we've been trying all sorts of stuff. We had I created a festive Zoom escape room focused on entrepreneurship for my students last week, just to see if we could just get something else going. But it's not working. Something you could look at is the way that the big tech companies are trying to engage their remote workers. So they're mixing kind of the online and the offline. They're sending kind of packs and kits to their employees with baking things and award ceremony kits and stuff, just to try and give them that kind of sense of something to do and something to connect with. And I think there's something kind of cool like that if there were games or social elements for students, that they could do something tangible as they were connecting. I think they might feel less hard done by, but it is a tricky one. Yes, universities would support it, and I think they would be a lot more likely to align with a startup than they would have ever done. So usually it's very hard for a startup company to kind of weigh in with these big institutions. Usually you have to be about kind of 5 years old as a startup before you can really climb those ranks. Not this year, not anymore. So again, I would say pilot in one university, try and get it working and make sure that you have a good model there, and then target the others. So in your plan for your pitch, maybe say, this is the university that we're targeting 6 months in, and then after 6 months, these 3 are our next targets. I think that would be great.
Okay, we have a question here from Gail. Gail asks, how many external professionals will we need to validate our idea?
Yeah, I mean, as many as possible, but again, within the time frame that you have. One good piece of advice from one person could be just as valuable. But I would say, your mentors will be in this area, and ask them. They can either be an external professional, you can count them, or ask them to nominate one person, to text one person and ask them, or to give you one email address. What I found in hackathons is shooting like 50 emails off at random to people doesn't tend to work over a weekend period. So, kind of 1 or 2 emails that are sourced through us is probably more useful. Like 3 would be great, but as many as possible, as long as they're giving you the right information. There's a kind of a good, I think it's called the Mom Test, that book, or you can get it on Audible, and it talks about asking people questions that you expect the answer back. So don't ask them a question of, we're a group and we're trying to come up with a solution for COVID. Do you think we're doing a good job? the obvious answer is to say, yes, you're doing great. That sounds brilliant. Ask them questions that give you some insight. Say, is this pricing structure too much for our offering, in your opinion? Give them something where they can actually give you like a meaty answer, something that actually will help your concept. Just validating for the sake of it. Do you like us? Yeah, fine. Do you like us? Yeah, fine. It doesn't actually add much to your concept. So be careful when you're trying to get that validation. Your app is centered around mental health. Interesting. I wonder what aspect of mental health. Is it mental health during COVID, post-COVID, or is it related to COVID? That would be really interesting to find out. Cold calling, yeah, I think cold calling is great, but again, it's a Saturday, so you might find it tough. LinkedIn messages, the real workhorses of the world still respond to LinkedIn messages of a weekend, so I think that could be really, really good. And send some asks out to me, and I'll see who I can tally up for you as well. The mental health aspect is interesting because, I'm not sure what area it's in, but there has been a lot of research out there at the moment that people that have had COVID are now needing some sort of mental health precaution. There was a study there this week that showed that people who have had COVID-19 are 5 times more likely to have some kind of mental issues afterwards. So there's a real gap in the market there. Plus there's a website in America where just a forum where I think 1 million Americans joined the forum in order to connect with other people that have had the symptoms and have had the virus, to share insights and to share kind of data and to share, understanding of what have happened. So if people are jumping onto a forum to connect, that's a massive gap in the marketplace there too. Anything else, Sam?
Brilliant. So we had just 1 or 2 other questions here. There was one about, I guess, coming up with a price point. If you have any advice on coming up for a price point, especially if it's something that doesn't exist already.
Yeah, that's tricky. Hi, Ava. So there's a couple of ways of doing this. And, again, given the timelines, one of the ways that you can do is reach out to your customers and get a sense of how much they would pay. And not just how much they would pay, but kind of where and when they would pay is good. So would they prefer to pay in one chunk? Would they prefer to pay through subscription? Would they prefer to pay, as like extra features, etc. So you can tease out some of those concepts by talking to your kind of potential customers. But I would, again, jump back to the thing of, you have to ask good questions to get good answers. So they can't give you valid answers unless you give them a good idea of what the concept is. So if I asked you, how much would you pay for a meal? Your answer is going to be, well, it depends, doesn't it? Exact same thing. If you reach out to your customers this week or this weekend and say, we've got an idea, it's like this, how much would you pay for it? It's going to be tricky for them to answer that question unless they have a really good insight of what you're doing and what it looks like and how it's pitched. So the better you can show them that, the better information you can get on pricing. And the other way you can do it is kind of work on the financials and see how much are we, going to spend, say, in our first kind of first 6 months, we'll say, what are our kind of expenses looking like, and try and work backwards from that of how much would we have to charge in order to make this reality. There's kind of, usually you come somewhere in between, and if there's a big deviation, so if it's going to cost you a fortune to make, but your customers are expecting that it'll be quite cheap, then you've got a problem. You have to rethink that business model. Maybe it's better to sell to big businesses than to the universities rather than to the students. Maybe it's better to consider, trying to attach something else to your concept to make it cheaper, maybe cutting out some of your features and expenses, ditching that app for a platform early on. What are the ways that you can kind of try and balance that seesaw to some extent? You're not going to get it perfect this weekend, and that's fine. But just a kind of an average, what are our 5 big expenses? what are they looking like? Okay, what are our customers saying? Let's meet somewhere here in the middle.
Then we just had a clarification from Gail. You said the mental health app is a support system that is tailored around people discussing amongst peer groups about their feelings.
Oh, that's really interesting. And again, kind of given the remote work context and the remote learning context, that's really interesting, because even I have noticed myself that in kind of boardroom talks and in discussions, people are starting to quiet down a little bit. We're not used to as much of the kind of network talk anymore. So, supporting people to continue those conversations, I think that could be really, really good. And actually, though, there are some universities that are building this into their kind of LMS systems. So, where you usually get your notes and things for kind of college deadlines, they're going to have more interactive features. So I know that there's a happiness module in two American universities, and they're developing concepts like this in Ireland at the moment, where say like your Fitbit and some of your devices your data is tracked, and it feeds into this happiness module where you talk about your sleep patterns, you learn from sleep experts, and you kind of reflect on your own data, you reflect on your own welfare as part of this kind of well-being module. And one of the aspects is about kind of, just communication of feelings. So there's some little bits like that. I know that they're developing like the emoticon faces and stuff so that you check in every day and aspects like this. So very topical, and it's something that universities are very interested in at the moment. So good shout.
Okay, so I think if there's no other questions here, guys, remember, feel free to fire any questions over to us on the Discord. Thank you, Roisin, so much for coming on this morning. Really, really fantastic advice.
You're very welcome. That was awful when the whole thing froze, but now we pivoted and persevered. Yeah, best of luck with it all, and well done, Sam. It's great to see these hackathons going on more and more, and I hope something comes out of it. I'd love to watch are the finals going to be live? Or
yeah, they'll be live on this platform actually, so I'll make sure to share a link with you.
Perfect. Okay, well, look, you can throw my email address into the chat or whatever. I'm working today, so if you need anything, just shoot me a quick email and I'll see what I can do for you. Okay.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Roisin.
Bye.